First job, I've taken the bottom plate off the engine. Now I'm going to take the cover off here. Cover just lifts off, put the oil cap back. Next job, I'm taking this air hose off, undoing this clip, and then undoing these clips here, then just lifting this out. It's also got a cable tie here that's chopped off. Remove that. Right, undo water hose. Can't seem to be able to pull that up, so I'm going to try and take this off and this other air hose off as well first. Right, going to just unclip these and try and get this out of the way. Still can't get this off, but going to unclip these two plugs here, blue and black, and try and get this off to get the fan off. Blue connector just comes out of the blue connector. This connector basically is opened by pushing that. This top piece seems to be held with a cable connector here, and also down here. You can see that. Right, this airbox here, I'm just going to strip this back off. There's a clip just on the top here. I'm just going to fold it back to give more access here. There's also a small bolt just down here that needs to be undone. That's the bolt that's come out, 8mm. That's where it's come from. Just pull it out there. But there's oil at the top there, quite thick, and it's running down there. I don't know where that's coming from. Right, this pipe does actually have a clip. And it's right. I was going to see it there. I haven't got it. Yes, there. And the only way I'm going to get that is if I get this fan out. And this fan has a wire connecting here down to here. So I just need to sort that clip out as well. Right, this is the bottom plate under the sump. The rear two are the long bolts with the spacers, just like that. Got a short bolt here, and two short bolts at the front, one there, one there. There's a bolt here that looks as though it's been replaced. Probably should be one of these, but it's a different bolt. It's slightly bigger head. I had to cut this one off, which you'll get a short bolt through, probably the same size as one of these with a nut on. Another one here and another one here. I had to cut those off, and I also had to cut this one off here, but this has got a welded on spacer on the chassis, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to replace that one. Right. Undone the fan, so it's unscrewing now, and there's a wire that's going in here which I've got to take off. I need to undo this connector for the fan, and so I can take the fan out. Right, just put it back together minus fan to check, see whether it was the fan that was causing the noise. I've started the engine up, it wasn't, so fairly sure. Now after examination it's the oil pump and oil seal that have gone. So first thing to do, I'm going to retake off this hose here and then take off this this bit here. Right, I've got a clip here, a small bolt here and a circlip here, and there is an electrical connection here, and this has got a hose clip here. These clips are actually integral with the actual hose itself. Right, this electrical connection Just squeeze and pull. Right, it's yellow onto the back of that, and it's part of this this harness here. It's also going into here. So, right, this vacuum hose as well, I think, it's also got to come off. Looks like it's a squeeze and pull. So that is complete, and just going to put the bolt back into the hole there and tape it on. I'm just going to take this pipe off here. That's just this clip removed. There's just a clip here for this pipe, and then there seems to be sort of like a spring clip under here, which I'm just going to try and get. Yeah, this pipe here, coolant pipe, which goes from here just across and clips into here with this spring clip on here. Right, taking off this blue plug here, and also this vacuum hose here, which I'm just going to thread back through here. This vacuum hose just slots onto this here. Right, the blue's out. I don't think I have to take this and this off. I've put them back on because I think if I take this bracket off here, all this, and just pull these vacuum hoses off here, I think all this will just basically fold back over the engine. So anyway, we'll just have a look. I've done this bolt down here, this bolt here, and all this pipe work. There's a vacuum connection here, a couple of clips here, and I think if I take all that and undo this, I think all that should just float up over the top of the engine. Let's give it a go. So I took that off, pulled this off from this little lug here, undid the two clips here, undone the bracket, put the nuts back in, and that just floats straight up over the top. Champion. Right. The next job is I'm just going to undo this screw here with an 8mm spanner to take this little vacuum chamber out. So here, with that bolt removed, that just pulls just straight out. Straight out. It's just centered on that little hole there, on this little spigot. The next job is I'm going to take this off here. I'm going to separate it here and here, or here, and then just fold these pipes back. I'm going to take this clip off here, and also I'm going to have to take this off the cover here. Right, I've undone this bracket here. It goes onto this screw that's actually in the cam cover housing. I've screwed the screw back in, and this lead is actually linked by a clip onto this pipe. So it's going to undo the clip and just see if I can just pull this a little bit further away, give it a bit more wiggle room. Right, got a couple of clips on here which are onto the cam belt housing. So take these off and put the bolts back in, and just to release these pipes from the cam belt housing. So there's this bolt here. The spanner's actually on the bolt, and there is a nut on the head which I've loosened. I'm just taking this bolt off, which connects this bracket and all these wires here, and so it's like a rod bolt. This stud doesn't appear to come out, it's loose and undone, and it just has a nut on the end to attach these two clips, this for this one and for this one. Right, next job, we're going to take this bracket off here. It's got 3 funky bolts. There's one here, and there's 2 directly under here, which I think seat the vacuum chamber. And they've got a long stem, and then they've got a stud behind them. Right, that's one of those studs. I can get to that quite easily. That one, you're going to need a box spanner to get into it, and the other one further down, if I can find it, is there. That's easy one to get to as well. Well, that's the top one, top bolt taken out with a box spanner.
Right, this is a starter motor here. I've got to pull off these breather tubes. There's 1, 2 in there. I think move these breather tubes to the side. There's a bracket at the back here with 3 bolts in it. I think I can get away with the 1 bolt just on the actual engine block. And then there's another 2 bolts, 1 there, and there's 1 higher up behind these tubes. I've got to undo them and slide the starter motor back, so I've got access to the ring gear. There's obviously HT cables here. I'm going to leave them on and leave the starter motor just dangling further backwards. There's another wire here connected into the block. I'm going to just unclip that and we should be good. Well, to get access to the starter motor, I've pulled the pipes off, but I think it'd be best to take this plate off at the back here to get access to the top, not this bolt, but the top bolt to undo it.
Right, there's the starter motor there. I've slackened off. Well, basically I've removed 2 of the bolts out of the back bracket and slackened the top one off. I've left the electrical connections on the starter motor because they were quite difficult to get out, and I thought they might be difficult to get back on if I got the nuts off. And I've managed to just pull the starter motor backwards and rest it on the wires and the rest of the chassis. But that's revealed the ring gear. Hold the ring gear. You can see the top hole there for the starter motor, where it goes onto that part of the engine block, and then to the right of that there is like a plastic grommet, and that's going to give access to the locking point on the ring gear. So that starter motor pulled back and ready to lock the crankshaft up.
Right, I'm going to slacken the belt on this tensioner here. I'm going to take this belt off, and then I'm going to take this pulley off, and take this wheel off here. Basically, to get the belt off, all you do is you put a 3/8 inch ratchet wrench in that tensioner, and just move it anti-clockwise, and it untensions the belt. Right, next to come off, pulley and idler wheel. Right, now I've got some e-Torx sockets. I'm going to take off this, I think it's a water pump pulley, stick an Allen key through a hole in the side just to fix it, and slacken these nuts off. And I'm going to do the same with the crank pulley. Right, removing the tensioner, single bolt. So now it's time to loosen and undo all the bolts for the cam belt cover, and hopefully try and pull it off. Just need to take this off so I can just flex it out the way to get access to one of the cam belt cover bolts just behind here. To flex this one out of the way, I'm going to have to take this up again and just pull it down. Right, the moment of truth. All the bolts I think have been undone, so this cam cover should be actually loose. So it's got to gently prise it off if I can. Seems a bit stuck there. So. Yeah, it's coming. It's all coming. And there she is. Cam belt cover off. Just needed a bit of wrestling to get around some of this pipe work, but it came off really easily. Right, just have a look, and I think I was Right, about the oil leak. Looks like it's the oil seal's gone on the oil pump on the crankshaft. It's leaking out there and going down. That's where I've lost the oil from. I'm just looking at it through a mirror. Yeah. Right, next job, take the alternator off and the alternator bracket. Going to remove this offside front cover to get access to the alternator. Right, I'm going to remove generator bolts. There's 2 bolts there and 1 on the top. Quite difficult to get to, but we'll see. Right, to help loosen the alternator, I'm going to loosen this positive cable at the bottom of the sump. I've got to take this off anyway to get the oil pump off. A nut there, and there's a further nut there. So I'm just going to drop that off, loosen the cable, and hopefully be able to pull the alternator a bit further forward so I can undo it. Just taken the alternator bracket off to allow more flexibility with the wires, the alternator and starter motor, but I've dropped the last bolt on the floor somewhere. Right, I've struggled too long. I'm going to take the wires off the starter motor, positive and negative, and extract that completely, and then pull the wires through to pull the alternator out. Right, starter motor's off. Which was a right pig to get off, but done it. So I'm going to try and pull this alternator forward and disconnect the wires and pull the alternator out. Then I hopefully can get the alternator bracket. But first I'm going to try and take this small bracket up here off. This is connecting the alternator bracket to this pipe, and it's restricting the positive cable from the alternator. So I'm going to try and drop that bracket, and then the alternator's just come loose on the wires, and hopefully I can take that off. There's no way I was going to get that bracket off, so I've just taken those 2 bottom bolts off and twisted that the top one, just twisted it to the side to release the cables. Hopefully that's going to do it. Alternator, the rear connector on that was a right pig to wiggle off, but managed it. So just taking the positive off, and then the alternator can just come out, and then we can get the alternator bracket off. That's alternator and starter motor off. Next one is, well, last one before I lock the engine up, is this alternator bracket down here. Hopefully this should be a bit easier. Right, this is the bracket from below. It looks like it's got 4 bolts on it. 1 at the bottom there, 1 just behind this bracket here, and then 2 up at the top. 1 and 2. So this should be fun to get. Let's see. Right, decided to take this little bracket from below the alternator, which carries that wire. I'm going to take that off so I can get access to the alternator bracket. Right, I've managed to get a ring spanner on this last bolt. I can't get a socket on it, it's all too tight around it, and so I'm going to see if I can just do it by feel, but that's a difficult one to get. Looks like I've got another alternator bracket bolt just there to take out. The back one at the top is very difficult to manoeuvre, so I'm going to try and leave it in and just drop this alternator bracket out, so it'll be out enough to just sort the oil pump. Well, I don't believe it. I persevered with that top rear bolt and got the alternator bracket clear. It must have been a millimetre, half a millimetre to square to manage to get that bolt out. Anyway, this alternator bracket is still attached to this plastic pipe here up at the top here, but I'm not going to bother with touching that because it's swung completely clear of the oil pump. And so next job is to lock the lock the engine up on the flywheel and on the cams, and then start to remove the belts, etc., and the crank pulley, and then the oil pump. Right, I've taken the grommet out of the hole in the crankcase to expose the flywheel. I've turned the crank round until the actual locking pin hole is right opposite the hole at the top there. I've got the locking pin, and I'm going to put the locking pin in. Right, locking pin's in place, and I've just held it in with a long bolt through the starter motor hole, so that it won't drop out. So it's locking the flywheel, and it's not going anywhere. Locking pins inserted into camshafts. 1, 2. It's all set. Now we've got the locking pins, and let's see if we can take off the crank bolt and take the belt off, and the idlers and a tensioner. While we've got the belt on, I'm just going to just crack these nuts, just loosen them, the 3 nuts around on the cam sprockets, on that one and on that one. Cam tensioner looks new, about 2017 it said it was done, and the belts that, but interestingly there's engine oil on that, so I think the belt's been carrying engine oil up and dropped it on it. Idler bearings and tensioner are like new, no play in them, they're all good. They've only done probably about 30,000 miles, if that. The bolts for those have been put straight back in the block. And there we have it, the crankshaft pulley bolt pulled off, and the pulley just came off, no problem at all, but that was tough on. So anyway, so we can now unbolt the oil pump and see where we go, see if we can get that off. Right, there's 4 long bolts that hold the sump on from the bottom. That's one there, there's one next to it there, there's one there, and there's another one, if I can just see it, there. So I'm going to drop those. Four bolts off at the bottom of the oil pump. Let's take the 10mm bolts off around the oil pump itself. Well, that's all 10 bolts around the circumference of the oil pump removed, and cam belt sealing. And there's another one on the other side if I can find it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Right, with all the bolts loosened to get the oil pump off, I just made there's 4 screw holes, 6mm, just bent a bit of copper tube, put a couple of holes in it, and just made a handle, top and bottom, and it just pulled off, popped straight off very, very easily.